I think right now we're in a period right now where it is coming to that, where it is coming to survival. You know, it's just non-stop lockdowns, non-stop financial loss, non-stop travel restriction, non-stop isolation. And you think, okay, well, this is a great time to meditate. Actually, no, because
this is Friday, the 13th of August, 2021. I'm with Bhante G. Varapano and Pannobhasa and John Menges. And this Saturday, the 14th for G. Varapano. And John Menges, this is his first time with us. He's been into Buddhism for 15 years. He's been a supporter, follower of Bhante G. Varapano over the last 10 years. And Bhante Varapano was entering his 10th reign now, which means 10 years as a monk. John's a musician in New York, and he's. Would you like to start off with a question for the group, John?
Yes, hello. My question is, how do you balance the search for inner happiness with worldly needs of human relationships and work?
All right, well, like the traditional Buddhist approach to life is renounce the world as much as you are able. You know, it's like a Buddhist monk just completely renounces worldly life, or is supposed to anyway. So I suppose if you're going to take a Buddhist approach to balancing spiritual practice with worldly necessities, then you have to understand yourself and your situation well enough to know what your necessities are, and then work from there. Get as much spirituality in after you've taken care of the necessities as you have time for and energy for. So if you've got a relationship, you've got responsibilities to family or something like that, then I mean you have to take care of that. If you consider that to be a necessity, if you consider that to be like really high priority, then obviously you have to find the time for that. You have to fulfill your responsibilities in that direction. If you've got to pay the bills, that sort of thing, then of course you have to work or somehow come up with money in an honest way. And then once you've gotten all of the necessities down, then you fit in spiritual practice. But I mean, you can combine the two at the same time. I mean, obviously, you know, you should be practicing Dhamma at some level all the time if you're able to. Like just keeping 5 precepts is practicing Dhamma. Or if you're able to be mindful, like when you're driving to work, then you can drive mindfully to work and drive mindfully back, and be careful about, you know, always using right speech and that sort of thing. And so even if you're really busy, you can get meditation in, at least with regard to mindfulness practice. And aside from that, then try not to be too much engaged in the world, because as I said at the beginning, then you have to, or if the Buddhist approach is to renounce the world to some degree, renounce worldliness, renounce being just enmeshed in the whole craziness of worldly life. So keep that to a minimum. Keep, you know, do your duties as well as you can, and then try to be mindful and moral and meditative as much as you're able. Seems to me.
Very good. I would say, question again, how does one balance the search for inner happiness with the basic needs of human relationships and work? I would say relationship with others, say your main relationship with a spouse or girlfriend, should not be the main focus. The Buddha said you should be fond of your own company. You should not crave the company of others. So the first priority, the highest priority, if you're trying to balance your inner happiness, is to have some time to work on yourself, have enough, you know, reasonable amount of time to develop your own happiness, your own spiritual path. And a relationship can assist that or help that, but wouldn't spend too much time on relationship. I mean, if you have kids, that's another thing. You have an obligation to spend time with your kids. But if you just have a spouse or a girlfriend or a boyfriend, I think, yeah, like Pannobhasa was saying, sort of turning back from worldliness, putting the highest priority, your own spiritual path, your own spiritual development, your own cultivation, I would say. Okay, John, do you want to answer your own question?
Yeah, I mean, I would generally agree with that. What you're both saying, I think, you know, to be honest, I've had kind of these struggles during the last couple of years during the pandemic. There's the work that I get a lot of satisfaction from. It's very creative, and it's for me, it's more than just the basic, needs of, living. And I do have kids and changes in my personal relationships with friends and girlfriends. And so there is some, I will admit, some craving and attachment there, which I feel has been kind of getting in the way of my search for inner happiness. So I guess I would answer in some ways to, I don't know, I guess like you're saying, renounce some of those things, or at least not having the same kind of craving that I do, and then that will help me lead to more inner happiness.
Okay, and Bhante Verpagno, how would you answer it?
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting listening to everybody, and I think everybody has said some valid points. Where I'm going to hit, my angle is this. I think there's extremes, and then there comes to the middle. Like, yes, in Buddhism, if you're focused if you're focusing on your next lifetime, or you're focusing on the goal, which is not to be reborn kind of thing, which I won't go into right now, but the ultimate goal is liberation, unbinding, freedom from dukkha itself, like totally cut off, right? So the thing is, we've got to face the facts. That requires a very, very strong commitment, a very, very strong, extra strong effort, and a huge renunciation of everything, right? We have to face those facts, right? But then you come within your own lifestyle and your own capabilities, and what you can see and what you can do. But the other thing is that we need to understand is, as you develop discipline, everything changes. So every day you get growth. So you see more and more and more. So we can't ever walk away from the discipline, regardless of your situation, regardless of whether you're a monk or not a monk, or practicing a little bit or practicing a lot, or whatever you want to call it. The discipline will grow. The results will start coming in. So, these things, we need to understand that this is on a momentary basis, insights. So when you get those insights and you're keeping a basic discipline every day, you're going to get the results, and that will fuel you to grow more and more. However, right now, we're in a bit of a situation because, everything's threatened, even Buddhism itself, because Buddhism relies on donation. Buddhism relies on lay people funding it in a big way. Lay people need to work. You need to eat, you need to pay your rent, and you need to pay for all these things. And there are two conditions where the Buddha said, now correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is true, right? Like, I'm not sure if he said you cannot be a monk during this time, or it's not a favorable condition to be a monk at this time. I can't remember if it was you should disrobe during this time now. I can't remember clearly on that one. Maybe Brian or Panyo might know. But basically, during a famine or during a war, right, it's not a good time to be a monk, or you should disrobe, because it doesn't make any sense, right? So these things are pretty, these right now, I'm talking about right now. I'm not talking about pre-COVID lifestyle, okay? I'm talking about right now, like these lockdowns are affecting a certain population of people. Not so much the people that have got millions of dollars stashed away in accounts and investments and all those kind of things, but the person who's on like a $40,000 salary a year, $20,000 salary a year, 60,000, 70,000, 80,000. That's getting really compromised. Then there's the travel as well, and the stress of like just going to see your mother or going to see your father, or if you want to take your kids to the park, if you've got kids. This has become a very difficult issue, right? So how do you find happiness in that? I have to say, that's going to be difficult. That's going to be difficult. That's going to be very difficult, because your life needs are being threatened right now. you know, the needs, like where's the food coming from, where's the money coming from that will supply me my roof over my head, that will allow me to buy food, that will allow me to pay the bills, the expenses of just you know, banal life, the needs of life. That's being affected right now with millions of people around the world, and so many people have committed suicide, and so many people have gone broke right now, and there are many homeless in the street. So when we try to preach Buddhism, you know, you should practice and practice and practice. Well, in my case, I think there needs to be some kind of understanding of this, and this is what I want to talk about, is like, how do you combat what's going on now, survive through it, but also maintain your practice? So my answer to that is, well, you know, there has to be a commitment of some minimum discipline, but at the same time, survival comes first. I believe, even as a monk, yes, that's what I believe. I think survival comes first, because even if as a monk, if you can't eat, the Buddha said, if you go arms round and no one gives you food, you're allowed to go arms round again and again and again until you get some food. And if you can't get some food, you're allowed to beg for it. You're allowed to ask people for food. You're allowed to walk around asking for people for food. So that kind of makes it clear that the Buddha said, well, if you need to eat, so you do whatever you need to eat, right? Especially if you haven't eaten after a day or 2 or 3 days, you've gone arms around, no food, no food, no food. Well, what's the point of dying? Because that's not skillful. You can't meditate. Your body needs some nourishment. So in that case, survival takes precedence over everything else. So I think right now we're in a period right now where it is coming to that, where it is coming to survival. You know, it's just non-stop lockdowns, non-stop financial loss, non-stop travel restriction, non-stop isolation. And you think, okay, well, this is a great time to meditate. Actually, no, because for a lay person, when there's no security as to where money's coming in tomorrow or the next day, the rent needs to be paid, food needs to be paid, whether you live by yourself, whether you live with people or you have a family or kids, that doesn't change. So that's where I'm at with that right now for the current situation.
Wow. Yeah, you know, that reminds me, in 2014, I felt all of Buddhism was getting threatened. Like, my main career was a lay Buddhist teacher spread. I thought my whole mission in my life is to spread Buddhism. Then I got more into the political issues of the world, like the New World Order, making videos about that, because I thought, you know, even Buddhism is going to be threatened by this. So I felt I had to help protect Buddhism. That was part of my motivation. So it's similar motivation to what you're describing.
Yeah, if you have a family, I mean, if you've got kids or something like that, then that really complicates things, which is one reason why monks aren't supposed to have a family, you know, why they don't get married and have kids. That's one of the main reasons for that. So, I mean, that really is something that's has to be faced. I mean, if you're alone, if you're living just independently, then a certain amount of austerity, just accepting hardship, you know, like monks are supposed to accept heat and cold and hunger and thirst and sickness and all this sort of thing. And a layperson who has a stoic attitude, I mean, he might be facing even more of that because he's making more bad karma because, you know, he's not living as saintly of a lifestyle. So he just has to face the rough consequences with as much equanimity as he can manage. So a certain amount of stoicism, I think, should be cultivated in Buddhists in the West, especially, seems to me. But again, it's like there is the question of, you know, if you've got children or you've got people reliant on you, then really you've got a duty to them. Yeah, you can't just let your kids go hungry. I mean, you can't maintain any kind of equanimity with that sort of thing going on. So yeah, that is a difficult question. It's something that maybe Bhante can answer or Brian, because yeah, I mean, what are you going to do?
I guess that's a question, what to do about it instead of just talking about the problem. I've seen lots of videos talking about the problem, and certainly with COVID. So Bhante, do you have any solutions you want to talk about?
Well, yeah, since we're going around, let John have his say now, just for the sake of everyone has something to say, you know.
Okay, John.
Well, yes, I think you know, as a lay person with kids and an ex-wife and you know, managing all of that, and my work was greatly affected with COVID, and kind of managing that. And I think I did just go back to the basics of just kind of getting through each day at a time, and reminding myself of impermanence and equanimity, and that it will get better, my own situation. And that seemed to help when I sort of broke it down into, you know, day by day, or just hour by hour, so and whatnot, with being mindful and moral and all those kinds of things. So I mean, from my own perspective, I think that's maybe, you know, the best way of kind of getting through this, and also reminding ourselves about how everything is impermanent.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, that's pretty skillful. But, you know, like, the solution here is, okay, so I've been giving this a lot of thought, and you know, I think bottom line, it's kind of like, you know, you're on lockdown. So let's paint the picture like it is right now. So there's no end in sight to these lockdowns right now. They just seem to be getting worse and worse, particularly in Sydney. You know, in Australia and things like this, they seem to be getting worse and worse, when this lockdown actually started out as being supposedly only for 2 weeks, right? So now we're like a year and a half later or so, or almost a year and a half later, and there's just seems to be no end in sight. So how are you supposed to work and earn money and do just normal things, whether you got kids or not, haven't got kids? You know, this is a very difficult question. So I guess now we've got to get to the raw, to the core. I think no matter what, whatever you do, you know, we can't forget that, like Panya said, you cannot forget that there's karma, that the law of karma is in effect. We cannot forget that impermanence is in effect, that this is all part of dukkha. As the Buddha said, this is dukkha, and we're experiencing it because we haven't broken free from dukkha, and we're still here again. We're being reborn into this situation again, over and over again. So that fundamental needs to stay there in the background all the time, and your sati, your mental attention, needs to point to that all the time. Because the law of karma, there's no excuse if you're very poor or you're in a bad situation. That's not an excuse to start stealing, killing, lying, you know, spreading inaccuracies, getting drunk, getting depressed, and hurting your sobriety, for example. You know, so in order to get through this, well, a sober mind, a mentally attentive mind, is much more skillful and much more useful than a drunken mind or a drugged mind, or a mind that's you know, functioning from the intellectual level or from emotional level. So like, if you're freaking out every 5 minutes, that's not going to help you. It's not going to help everybody around you. So we need to be stoic on that one. As Panya said, there needs to be a staunch stoic understanding and application of that skill, to understand, you know, I need to keep myself together, I need to stay strong, and I need to be vigilant, right? So again, wisdom, because wisdom cures a lot of problems, right? Wisdom ultimately is the one that sets you free, right? So coming back to your morals, I think that needs to be employed right now more than ever, even more staunchly, because right now it could be really tempting to you know, steal something or say some false speech about work just to get that extra job or get that extra money, which is good for the short term, and it might help your short-term survival. However, in the long run, it's not going to be good for you, because every action has consequences. So it's kind of like, we've got to keep our eye on that, right? So you can't lose sight of that. That's why you have to have a staunch mental attention on this, because everything you do has consequences. So there's kind of no point to selling out on your morals right now, even though it's really, really difficult. Now, because the consequences of selling out your morals outweigh the benefits, outweigh the daily benefits. Like, you know, if you're going to steal your food, maybe that day it's just better not to eat. Sure. Now, the question is, if you haven't eaten for 10 days, do you steal? Well, I would say try not to let it get that way. First, be skillful before. And if you have a staunch approach, hopefully that won't happen to you. But who's to say that that's not going to happen? It's always a possibility, whether you have mental attention or not, that these things can happen. So this is the other thing. We need to accept that bad things can happen. You know, there could be a famine, there could be a food shortage, there could be these things have to happen. So by developing a staunch mental attention and tapping into your wisdom, you should be able to start putting things into place to prevent it as much as possible. However, it will rain when it wants to rain. There will be earthquakes when they want to earthquake. You know, the lightning, the thunderbolts will thunderbolt and nothing can be changed. They cannot be stopped. Death cannot be stopped. So this is why this is dukkha. This is why this is dukkha, right? And we keep coming back to this same situation over and over again, right? So that's kind of like the fundamental structure. Coming back down to how do we survive right now? Well, first of all, yes, we're Buddhists, but right now our societies are crushing everything around us. The government, these laws, they're crushing everything. If Buddhist lay people cannot work and they're starving, that means Buddhism will die. There's just no other way. How does it fund itself? It cannot, right? So one thing we do have the right of, regardless whether we're Buddhists or not, we still have rights, and freedom is our right. However, we've got to defend it. And this is one thing I'll stop in a moment. This is one thing I've been kicking around with people. This is one thing for the last 40 years, most people just work, go home, watch TV, or they go to the gym, or they have some hobbies, go to sleep. If they've got a partner, maybe have some intimacy. If they've got kids, go to sleep, rinse and repeat every day. And there's very little citizen vigilance. We're not paying attention to society and what's going on in our surroundings. We're not, 30, 40 years ago, I used to know, when I was a kid, I used to know every person on my street almost. I used to know who the strangers were. We used to know when people used to, groups of people used to come from other blocks onto our street, for example. So there was a level of community vigilance, protection. In the old days, in the village days, I'm talking old days in Europe, before, maybe even in America, Australia's pretty young, 200 years, but basically when the village faced problems, like here in Thailand, they're still doing this. All the men stop working. All the men stop working and they deal with the situation. Everybody stop, they come together and they deal with the evil that's come, right? The women and children, the women even help, right? The children are put in a place and the men go to work, right? Women and men go to work. So which takes me to, the final thing I'll say in this is kind of like, we're all scattered and our constitutions have been tread on, like our actual rights, regardless of Buddhism or not, our actual rights have been treaded on right now because we have not been vigilant at defending them, at standing by them, and also keep and doing and holding those who break, people in power who break these rules, who do not follow the principles. We're not holding them accountable. We're not consistently anyway, not consistently. And this is why they're able to get away with what they're doing. So, I'm going to ask everybody, whose duty is it to protect the rights of the citizen? Whose duty is that? Is it the duty of the government? Is it the duty of the lawyer? Or is it your duty, each and every one of us? Whose duty is it to protect the family, the individual, the family, friends, and the community in which you partake your life win. Whose duty is that, right? So that's pretty much it, right? So no, I wanted to add one more thing here before I finish on this one. It's kind of like duty comes first, then practice. First, you have to go to the toilet and alleviate yourself, wash your body. You have to eat. You have to wash your robes. You have to clean your dwelling before you sit down and meditate, right? You can't just sit down and meditate having not gone to the toilet, having not washed yourself or washed the robes, and taking care of the basics of life, the fundamentals first. That goes hand in hand, right? Then comes discipline, okay? So yes, this is what I want to kick, right? There is a big denial in our societies, particularly Western societies, that are seen as negative, pessimistic, about secret societies in our midst. There's also denial about evil, right? There's a big denial about evil, about how a lot of our people in power across the board are pedophiles, abusing children and doing all these nasty, sinister things behind the scenes. There is a big denial of this. We have not manned up about it and started to look at this, because even the Freemasons, they have lodges all over the world, particularly in Australia. They've been going for quite some time. We know nothing about them, right? So these things are going on in our society. So how can one practice Buddhism, sit under the tree, or sit at home nice and relaxed when everything's being trashed right around us at every minute right now? That's very difficult. So you back to morals first. Now I'll stop here.
Yeah, it's probably harder on you being a monk than it is for us lay Buddhists. Pannobhasa, do you want to comment next?
Yeah, it's something that occurred to me that would be a suitable solution for a lot of people, though not all people, in that they're one of the most well-known suttas is the Mangala Sutta, and one of the blessings in the Mangala Sutta, it's a list of blessings or great good fortune or whatever. Up near the top is just living in a suitable place. So I think one good thing for a lot of people to do is, if they want to live a relatively free life, they should get away from leftist authoritarian areas as well as they can. Like in America, it's relatively easy. I mean, you've got red states and blue states. You've got states that are just refusing to lock down, that are just in open rebellion against the federal government now. So if you can move to a place like that, like I managed to do, like South Carolina is a thoroughly conservative state, then that would be a good way of going about things, at least. And then if the shit really does hit the fan, at least you won't be trapped behind enemy lines. You know, if things really go hot, then you'll be on the right side. Also, you'll be in less danger, and your family will be in less danger. But there's one issue I'd like to bring up that a friend of mine was discussing with me today, and that is that his job is requiring him to get the vaccine. And so it's like, to what extent are you willing to fudge on the truth, saying, oh, if you can get like a friendly doctor to say that you have a health condition or something like that, so that you have like an exemption from taking the vaccine, where is the line that you draw between like the evil of maybe losing your job when you've got a wife and kids to take care of, or maybe saying that you can't have the vaccine because of a health condition that really is just exaggerated and not all that bad. So that's sort of a question I'm tossing out there that might have some applicability to some people that are watching this, because there is a lot of pressure for people to get vaccines, and so there are certain ways of avoiding the vaccine which may not be entirely honest, but which is worse.
Yeah, I think on that one, the idea is to attack. Sorry, that's not a very non-Buddhist way of putting it, but I think it's, instead of trying to, get approval and send letters to the doctor, I think it's just, you need to be straight out to the truth. Look, I have a right to refuse. If I believe that if I believe that this vaccine will harm me, I should not be forced to take it at all. So then the person says, well, I have a right as an employer because I believe in the vaccine, that everyone should be vaccinated for safety reasons. So then you're left with a choice, isn't it? You're left with the choice at that point. But see, at this point, you have to go, I think the only way to solve this solution is go back to the minister of your area, whoever your parliamentarian, sorry, I'm speaking Australian, whoever your representative is in American or in Australia, and demand that they take away that rule and demand that they stop putting pressure on employees and go back to the actual constitution. I mean, that's how it works. Like, if you know, they're ignoring our constitutional rights, right? We have the right to freedom, to happiness, right? Things like this. This is in our founding documents in Australia too, right? It's not, they're not the same. They're obviously there's differences. However, I think what's happening here is our rights will get taken away. So if you want to vaccinate, you vaccinate. But if you don't want to vaccinate, you don't have to vaccinate, because even the science right now, it's not in. These vaccines, for example, have only been around for about 6 months. So there's no long-term studies on them. So you cannot say they're safe or not safe, because there's no real study on them. The data is not in. So in that case, you have every right to refuse it based on safety grounds only. You don't feel safe with them. So it's not about, you know, if we go this other way where we say, oh, you know, I might be sick or not, what you're doing is complying to the tyranny, as far as I'm concerned. You're complying to the tyranny. So because in essence, are we following the Constitution? Are we following our principles? Or are we following whoever wants to make up the rules as they go? So this is a decision you have to make in yourself. So for me, I'm following the Constitution. Right now, for me, whether I take the vaccine or not, that's nobody's business. That's my personal business, first of all. But second of all, the Constitution allows me the right to refuse. If I believe it's going to endanger my life, I have the right to refuse that vaccine or anything that endangers my life. I have the right to defend myself. Simple. And that's what's missing in the argument here. See, we're just complying to these little steps of tyranny that are just losing focus and sight of what our actual constitutions say. And like in Australia, for example, the Prime Minister of Australia, he tried to form a national secrecy cabinet, which is unconstitutional, and he did it. And so a group of activists took him to court. Now that has been deemed illegal, he has to dismantle this national cabinet, and he also has to release all the files and all the documents they created. So this is what, if we don't monitor them, this is what they're doing, and they're doing that in Australia, right? They're breaking laws, not everywhere, but some laws have been breaking. We're catching them slowly, like we're pushing back. But this was a massive one. The Prime Minister sets up a national, like a national cabinet, where he doesn't have that power to do so. And if we didn't catch it, he would have continued to do that, right? So we caught it. So this is a big win for us, but we've got many more. But this is what I'm telling people, right? For survival right now, don't sell out on your morals at all. But you have to defend your rights. What are our rights? Who said that the Australian Constitution and the American Constitution right now is not valid? Who said that? Has that been declared? It hasn't been declared, right?
Could I comment on that, Venerable Maripino?
Sure.
I'm in British Columbia, Canada. Yesterday, our Bonnie Henry, our provincial health officer, she announced that on October 12th, people have to have the vaccination if they want to keep their jobs, like long-term care homes or medical facilities. So, you know, with regard to the Constitution, they get around the Constitution by saying, well, this is an emergency, a health emergency. So I think we're dealing with something larger, like the globalists. They control the governments or democratic. They get around the Constitution to make excuses to sort of gut the Constitution. So it's a globalist power. So I've been involved in protests since March of 2020 when it began here. Like I've done like 25 videos, a whole playlist on protests here, and I got kind of disillusioned doing the protests because we're fighting such a globalist power. They can print billions of dollars every week to bribe people, and there's these secret societies, like you say. So I do think of the law of karma, like what you said about Buddhism being threatened, Buddhism could die. Yeah, I mean, that's a concern of mine. I guess my highest refuge, I think, is law of karma. And if things do get worse, like you're saying, if there's, say, a famine, say they cut off the food supply and we're starving, I think, well, I really like the advice of maintaining our precepts. Like you were saying, we should maintain our precepts, like pannobhasa was saying, and maintain our ethics, and just accept, well, I guess this is happening with the law of karma. This is happening to us, but then what can we do about it? There's always the issue, well, we can do something within our precepts. What can we do about it? But I think with the globalists, it doesn't work so much just to try to enforce the Constitution. I guess I'm a bit pessimistic about the progression of this if they want to. But hopefully they won't succeed, or things go slowly from a globalist perspective. I think they would have wanted to take over the world sooner than this. So, maybe it'll screw up from their perspective. Maybe they won't succeed. Like the Buddha said, the future's uncertain. I guess that's my comment. But the law of karma, I think that's a big thing to contemplate.
Yeah, if you have enough people standing by their principles and refusing to obey an unjust law, then it's just going to overwhelm the whole legal system. I mean, you can't arrest everybody. So there is that. If enough people are standing up to their own principles, just, living according to what they consider to be right and just and true, then if there's enough people who do that, if you have like a critical mass of that sort of people, then really they just can't take over, because they really require sheep-like people in order to take over. If you just refuse to be a slave, then you make problems for them. But if like 20 or 30 or 40% of the population refuse to be slaves, then that's just a major problem for them.
Yeah. How about John? You want to comment, John?
Well, I kind of look at, I guess I'm focusing more on myself and like what I can do, to move forward with my own life. And, I am in New York City, and I'm choosing to stay here and just kind of deal with, everything that comes. And again, reminding myself that it's all impermanent, and we really have no idea where this pandemic is going. And I mean, we see these, disturbing things with what the government is doing. But I think, at least for myself, I find just trying to focus on my day-to-day lives again with survival and just kind of taking things as they come and deal with them as they come along. I think that's really been my approach.
Well, you are choosing to live in a city run by a Marxist lunatic.
Well, he's leaving this fall, and then we'll probably get another lunatic in there.
I wanted to comment on people standing up for their rights and it frustrating the system. I think the problem with we're the alternative media, the mainstream media, that's all owned and controlled by the globalists. So it seems the majority of people, 80% or more, they're the sheep. They go along with the mainstream media and they believe the lies. So the enemy is like your neighbor. The enemy is the people next door who believe this, and they want you vaccinated, and they're vaccinated and you're not. So they're turning us against each other. So the enemy is like an invisible enemy. The real enemy is invisible. So it's tough. Like truthers like ourselves, it seems we'll always be in a minority. I know they say like the American Revolution was done with just 3% of the population got it going. But I think that this is the problem. Like I agree, if enough people stood up, but it seems like there might not be enough people standing up since the majority go along with the TV set.
Yeah, well, I think things may have to get worse before they get better. Because eventually people just reach a point where they just can't take it anymore. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sorry, Panya. No, that was rude of me to interrupt. I apologize. Yeah, look, the situation feels really hopeless to a lot of people, and this is why I'm trying to talk like this. I'm trying to find solutions here. Like there needs to be a direction out of this. There has to be.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm calling from my attitude, with my attitude and kind of like my opinions on it. I'm trying to put them to the side, trying to actually give a very objective approach to this. But we need to understand the factors here that we've all talked about so far. There are evils, and there are interests who want to follow their agenda and their interests, which are not in the interest of all of society. But the citizen has the Constitution. That's our power. The problem with it is just a document. It's only a document. It's just a piece of paper. But the principle and the idea of it lies within your heart and your mind, right? So what they're trying to do is turn your heart and mind into following their principles and their ideas, right? And they're trying to enforce it. So how do you combat this? All right, this is what I'm trying to say. How do you combat this problem, this brainwashing, this pressure? Well, that's why I'm saying there needs to be a staunch, stoic approach. There's no other way. You know, like, you need to be staunch and solid and strong in your morals, staunch and strong and solid in your rights and the ability to defend them. Defending your rights doesn't mean getting a gun and hurting someone, shooting someone. No. But if you don't defend your rights, your neighbor suffers. This is what I want to tell you, John. Yes, you can think of just yourself and that's it. But when you comply or when you let things slide, not only will you suffer, but your kids will suffer, because your kids, you're bringing them into compliance rather than teaching them what our real rights are and defending them. And this is the big problem we have with a lot of people, is this apathy, which has been around for the last 40 years, where you just work, you go home and forget the rest. No, this apathy has been our downfall. The globalists have become powerful because of our apathy, because citizens are not being vigilant and paying attention. There's no other reason. I mean, you tell me another reason. Because if the Constitution...
nowadays, they're also using fear.
Well, yeah, well, that as well, right? But whose duty is it to stay strong, healthy, to stay educated? Is it the government telling us, or do we have to do it ourselves? Because realistically, the majority of the population, okay, not all, and this is a very generalized statement, so I apologize to anyone listening if this offends you, but basically people like to go to work, come home, have a few hobbies, watch TV, go to bed, and rinse, repeat. Sunday, have the time with the family, and that's it. What's missing here, right? And I've been talking about is there's no culture of, okay, so what's going on in the community? What's happening? Which laws have been broken? Are our ministers, are our representatives following the law? Are they doing what they say they're going to do? And what are we doing to hold them accountable? What's the local mayor up to? What's the local council up to? There's hardly any of this going on as citizens. But guess what? That's what our duty is. That's what it takes to protect our Constitution. And the globalists know that. That's why they do a lot of brainwashing, because they don't want you to defend your rights. Okay? So this apathy is our downfall. This apathy to just comply and just think about yourself, don't think about anybody else. Well, yeah, you know, that's not skillful, by the way. That's not a skillful action, John. I'll tell you why. Because if you only do what's skillful and profitable for yourself, and you don't, and your action is not skillful and profitable for others, that's not good. Right? The only action that should be committed in right action, there's 4 actions. I'm not going to go over that. We've done it before. But the action needs to be skillful and profitable for you, and skillful and profitable for others. And this is what I'm telling people. When you do something, like you do something that infringes on our general rights, you're doing something that is unskillful and unprofitable for others. So all these people being apathetic and just following convenience rather than duty, that is also another reason why our rules and our society is crumbling, because people are just, no, I'm just going to take care of myself. That's it. Just my family. I don't give a crap about anything else. Yeah, that's skillful and profitable for you, maybe. But guess what? Because your action is not skillful and profitable for others, that's going to come around and bite you on the backside. Okay? Because say everybody else thinks that way. Well, if there's henchmen coming to everybody's neighborhood, everyone will just try to save their own backsides, as opposed to everybody walking on the streets and pushing those henchmen back. Everybody will hide in their holes like mice because, oh, I'll just take care of myself, right? Because of apathy and convenience. Now you're trapped, right? So that's why that attitude has to be completely dismantled. It has to stop, right? So coming back to right action is whatever action you do, it needs to be skillful and profitable for you, and skillful and profitable for others. And that's what's missing right here. I think I've just found it. That's the darn answer here. Because if you just take care of yourself and you just, okay, I'll break this, I'll comply because, I need to get to work and it's convenient and all these kinds of things. Okay, fine. We understand that. But that's what's led us to where we are today, believe it or not. And guess what? Everybody's suffering for it because people did not do what was they supposed to do over the last 30, 40 years. And the globalists have known that, or whoever these powers are, they're creeping in. And see, when they pass laws, they do it at 1 a.m. at night, 10:30 a.m. at night when everybody's sleeping. What's also very common when I was, because I used to do a lot of protests and I was involved in some political things in New York at the time when I lived there. What they do, these sneaky little people, is they try to pass laws at like 11:30 at night on a Saturday or during Christmas when everybody's just like in happy mode, right? That's when a lot of these
law.
Pardon?
Or it's a 2,000-page long law that they passed.
Well, that too. Yeah, that too, right? Yeah, exactly. So I'll let you go for a moment. I'm on something, right? So I want to follow this through because I think I've realized something myself. So what they do in Australia, that they do this little secret thing. Now the Prime Minister got caught doing this secrecy national cabinet, which is this is a major win for Australians. I tell you, this is a major step forward because our government in Australia has been doing this secrecy stuff for too long. But in America, what they do is they write a 50,000-page document. Then they say, okay, we're going to vote on this in 2 hours at 1 a.m. on a Friday night or something like that, at Christmas or Easter. Now, they're doing that and they're counting on the citizens and all the representatives not to put any pressure on them because they're too busy enjoying themselves and relaxing because it's Christmas. So that's what they're doing. So who's to blame them or our own apathy? See, that's what I'm asking everybody to pay attention to. So these people that are ruling us have diligence. They are not lazy. They're organized. That is why they're winning. That is why they're getting away with everything, because they are organized, they are disciplined, they are focused, and they have a worldwide network. We are not. That's what's missing. So on an individual level, though, what I'm saying to everybody now, and I'll stop after this, whatever you do, okay, if it's skillful and profitable for you and skillful and profitable for others, that's the only thing you should be doing if you're a Buddhist. If you're a Buddhist, because that's right action. Doing what's skillful and profitable for you and not what is skillful and profitable for others, that's not right action. Doing what is skillful and profitable for others and not skillful and profitable for you is not right action. Doing what is not skillful for you, not profitable for you, not skillful for you, not profitable for you, that's not right action either.
Okay, I'd like to comment on just what you said about the Constitution. Like, I agree, the Constitution is important, but like pannobhasa would say, people are driven by fear. So I think what the globalists are doing, they're taking advantage of emotion. They know we're emotional, so they're trying to put us in an emotional state. So I think, well, one good thing we can do as Buddhists is to cultivate mental clarity, to emphasize our own mental clarity using the Dharma, acting rationally, acting with insight rather than just responding to the impulse of our emotions, because that's what they want us to do.
Yeah, I think they've gone beyond apathy at this point. I mean, they're really fear mongering. You know, it's like the globalists or whoever you want to blame for the whole pandemic lockdown and all of that. They really are trying to get people as afraid as possible. And as a Buddhist, it's just good to keep in mind that fear is always unskillful. It's always unwholesome. Worry and fear just make things worse. So, I mean, you just remind yourself of that, even though fear arises or worry arises, just keep reminding yourself that it doesn't help anything. It's just, foolishness from just this foolishness arising from past karma, that you can just be mindful of it and let it go and just don't let it run you. Because, I mean, most of the fear or all of the fear that they're trying to whip up in people is just for their own selfish ends.
It's all manufactured. There's nothing real going on. It's nothing real. It's a beautiful world. The environment's not so bad. It's a wonderful world. They're trying to convince us it's the end. It's a fearful. It's a pandemic. It's
Yeah, the world is coming to an end. People have been saying that for thousands of years at this point. It's always something or other.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. That I mean, certainly this fear, the media is just. I mean, you can't even follow any of the media, both sides, and it's all fear-based, and then we end up as individuals get kind of caught up in that and create apathy or ignorance, and that's really kind of what's running the world. And I think we do have to remind ourselves of that and be true to ourselves, and again, just everything is impermanent, and just feel it and let it go. Be cognizant of it and then just let it go.
Yeah, the better your mind is, the better a world you're going to live in. So that's
others too.
Well, look, just wrapping up on this, I think the solutions here is like as a conclusion to at least this part of some solutions. I mean, we're not there yet. We're just starting, but fear should be dealt with stoically. Worry should be dealt with. And the way to deal with that is stay within your morals, protect your inner chamber, your citta, your happiness. But also right now, we also have to protect our rights and not to be apathetic and to stay within right action too. I'm talking as Buddhists, right? But for lay people who are not Buddhists and are watching this video, and you're not really into following precepts or anything, which you should be, but I would ask you to consider who's supposed to protect the Constitution, because peace and freedom are definitely guaranteed in that document, right? Well, at least that's the idea. Now, so far, they've done a good job of giving us the impression that this Constitution does not rule anymore. But that's only if we let that happen. As far as I'm concerned, no. We still got a Constitution, we still got a system there, and they have not destroyed it 100%. So that for me gives me hope, and it gives me it's a chink in the armor. It's still a chink in the armor that we can make wider. And I'm not blaming them. I'm saying it's our fault. It's our fault for not protecting our rights, defending our rights, and also monitoring in the community and with right action. The Buddha said, you can't just live on your own and not worry about the community. Like, part of the Sangha's duty is to take care of the community with teaching Dharma, with leading through example, with sticking to the precepts, sticking to the Noble Eightfold Path, and that should help people live in that right way too. So in other words, it's not like you're a monk and then screw the rest. So just give me my food and that's all. That's it. No. It doesn't work that way. Because Buddha had compassion for all beings, right? It wasn't just Buddhist monks. Buddha had compassion for everything, like all beings, everywhere. Devas, lay people, anyone, non-Buddhists, whoever. So that action was 100% skillful because he had compassion for all beings. So your action we need to develop staunchly, stoically, this approach, because our actions have to be compassionate for everybody. And the only way to get to that point is doing what is skillful and profitable for ourselves, and doing what is skillful and profitable for others, because that is goodwill, that is metta, that is compassion, that is karuna, and it's also equanimity. It is. It's all four. Because when you're acting skillfully and properly for you and others, that's equal. You practice equanimity at that point too. That's why right action is important and not very well understood, right? So that's, yeah. So I think I'm going to stop here on that one. If Brian, if you want to lead the conversation to anything else, it's been 56 minutes. I think that's enough, unless I'll let everybody else talk. But I think I'm done. Like, I don't have much more to add to this conversation. And before I finish, I just want to thank Brian, Panyo, and John for coming together and allowing the opportunity for a discussion like this to take place. And I really hope whoever's watching, it helps you. And maybe we can continue, and maybe we can make the discussion go even further.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to thank you, Bhante, for putting the focus on solutions, talking about solutions, because we talked about the problems in many other videos, and it's all over the internet. And Pannobhasa, you always often finish with words of wisdom. Anything else you'd like to add to this?
Well, if you are a Buddhist person or just a spiritual one, don't make the mistake of separating everyday life from spiritual practice, because if you're living a spiritual life, then everyday life is spiritual practice. And do the best you can.
Sadhu.
Sadhu.
Sadhu. Sadhu.